sound. Guess I'll just close my eyes.
Let's go. All right, hopefully we're all set up for a David Dubine encounter of the Ice Age kind. No, of many Ice Age conversations. And we have a stowaway. Kitty, kitty. You're going to have to go because you're a meower. Right? Yeah, we're about to have a show and you talk too much. Too much of a talker. Three. I think we're ready now. Now that all the pussy's been taken care of. Kidding. Excuse me. 9:57. Excellent. Excellent. All right, let's see here. Baby wipes, how did those get there? Oh, I'm missing my coffee. I'll be right back after this message. Is if you guys act now. A limited time. Check this out. You can have, because we're going to go over to a new communist system, you can have all of this and more. You can get a free sickle and a hammer. We're not going to work with this stuff. We just, it's just for decorations and shit. But we can give you all of this stuff right here. Trash on the street, hypodermic needles, you get free garbage, there's a little shit here and there. Homeless people pissing. Not only that, but with the new communist state, you can get a free vaccine right here on the sidewalk. As you can see, several people is vaccinating themselves right there. Oh, there goes the popo man. But you know what? There's a lot of people just vaccinating themselves right here on the road. It's the new communism. I know this is a little hammer. We want to give you a little one. If you don't want to be dominated too big right now, you can right now act $39.95. You can get this little hammer and this little sickle for just a little bit of communism. But you gotta act now, and you can give the Communist Party in your local area the $39.95, and we can bring you all this and more. Cities burning to the ground. We can do it for you for a low, low price. Right there, $39.95. Just call the number. Woo! Communist TV. Everybody looks green out there, man. I think they're sick or some shit. I don't know why they're green out there, but everybody's green. Look, I think, if you watch this guy right here, he's gonna vaccinate himself. What you guys doing? What you guys doing over there? You guys got some free vaccine you didn't share with me, man? You know, in each state, you can get, I'm sure, a free vaccination. And, like I've been saying on this new channel, 420 TV totally recommends that you get fully vaccinated. You can get vaccinated twice. Matter of fact, the new, vaccines, the new technology of vaccines that's in kind of a little different than a regular vaccine, but they're calling it a vaccine. You can get 5 rounds of that for only $39.95 right now. If you call your local Communist Party, if you live in New Mexico or Texas, New Jersey, Philadelphia. Oh, and matter of fact, right here is one of, I'm really proud because we worked on this at the Communist Party right here. See this man right here? He's vaccinating himself right now. He's got a little bit of vaccination right there. I know my head's disappeared, but look, check him out. This guy right here, he's gonna he vaccinated himself right between your fingers right there. That's actually, he must be a medical professional. Actually, look, this young woman right here is vaccinating herself. Man! Yeah. You know what I'm saying, man? Did I mention our sale on communism? Right there, $39.95. Act now! And you can get free communism in your neighborhood. We'll even give you a free mask, and this was stitched together. It's got 2 masks you can cover up every time you go outside with the other socialists and communists. And you know, you guys ain't gonna pass diseases around to each other anymore. Because you'll have the 2-bagger. That's like, you remember back in the day when you had the 2-bagger because you was worried you might get an infection. Well, now you just do that to your face. It's just like your genitals, your double bagger. You put it right over there. It's communism for only $39.95. Within your own hammer and your sickle, you too can participate on shit on the sidewalks, cities burning down, and civilization collapsing. Plus, you know, with those pesky capitalists, we're gonna have to round them up and you know, put them somewhere so we can re-educate them and whatnot. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? Especially if you're a capitalist, right? For only $39.95 of your money, we're gonna make capitalism. You know what? For no longer, you don't have to call. We'll just go take someone else's $39.95. Then we'll pay for communism that way, and that way we don't even have to use the hammers or sickles to do any kind of work or some shit. We won't grow our food. We'll just go to their farm and take their food. I mean, they're working hard. They're working hard. They don't deserve that. They must have blue privilege. Those blue people under the earth that are growing all the mushrooms. We should go take the mushrooms. We could give them communism too. Them guys down there need their own communism. We'll bring it to them. For real. Now do we go for our cafe, and let's do this thing here. It's the nighttime view for those that want to be high. I am. Why not you? All right. Let's see here. Well, let's get this phone prepared action here. I don't even know how I sound on the mic. Hopefully not too bad because we tested it, but still things don't always work out. Like that. All right. Let's see. Need to open this up. Get it prepared for the Skype action. Ready for the excitement to come. Anyway, let's see. We'll wait. See if we can't get this fixed up right. Divine. Oh, that's the lightning thing. I never changed it. I'm ill prepared. There's the divine right there. All right, so we got that on speed dial. And see what we're going to talk about here. At her face. Look at her face. Not working. Huh. Weird. It's not working. It's frozen.
Are you trying to tell me you're gay or something?
Gay, straight, retarded. Why do we have to put labels on everything?
Because we do all right, or else no one's going to know what the fuck's going on.
Aha! Aha! What do you know from funny, you bastard?
What do you know what's funny anyway? You don't know. I can't say anything without getting banned. I wonder how these other channels get away with it. Something that I talk about, they don't like, man. And I don't know what it is, but that blows, doesn't it? It's the censorship book burning of our time. As the breeze blows, something wicked our way comes. Oh, that really burned my eyes. There's all kinds of stuff going outside. Shh, don't tell nobody. Things are supposed to be quiet because I'm broadcasting, but they never are. Wow. How secure are you? New York's vaccine passport apps. Look, Mickey Mouse passed. Don't worry about it. You can have your very own passport. You could have your very own passport right there, and you could travel anywhere if you're Mickey Mouse. If you take part in the cartoon, the Mickey Mouse cartoon. It's kangaroo coats and Mickey Mouse passports. On the news for you, passports. Don't forget to get all of your vaccines, and I do mean all of them. If there's a new one tomorrow, you must get it. You must take all of the old ones. They've never had any problems whatsoever. Never. They've had a 100% accuracy rate. They are safe and effective. No one has ever been hurt. No one. Ever. Safe and effective. They are. Sorry, I had to say that. Because that's the YouTube reality. They are safe and effective. If you have other opinions, you may not share them on our network of totalitarian authoritarianism. They're authoritarian. I don't know what's going on. What's going on with the phone calls here? It's 8:03. Do you know where your children are? Do you know where your corona is? Hopefully in the refrigerator. Did you guys know I was banned again? Damn it. I think in a few days I'm allowed to upload. I'm not sure. They won't give me the little thing that tells you you can upload again. It usually gives you a day counter, but I didn't get one. So, I don't know. Yo no sé nada con la videos. All right. I sent David to Dubai a picture he may be a little confused about. We'll see what he says about it here in just 1 second. On 420 TV News, playing the Ice Age Conversations, mini Ice Age Conversations, right here on 177.6 on your Freedom of Speech dial.
To almost every nation, including the United States, beginning in October. We'll have to have proof of vaccination before you're allowed into another nation. The lockdown has begun in earnest. Food prices are rising too quickly. The crop losses keep mounting. And this is just the timeline moving forward. 1 year from now is when it'll be so apparent to the populace that they'll have to have total control over the populace. And when I say them, globalists, top-down approach to control to food access, the citizens, the movement of citizens, with Australia being the test. So Ransom, I'm glad you're joining me tonight. I am still trying to get on my main computer here to be able to call you and move forward. But anyway, I'm glad you're joining me tonight. I was such a shock to see that they're going to require now full COVID status to be able to travel to anywhere on the planet. You'll have to be vaccinated or you're not allowed in another country. It's the beginning of the lockdown in earnest, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. I'm surprised you're shocked about it though, because we kind of saw that coming. I mean, they just talked about it so much in the first year that we knew that they were going to do that. Make everybody think they were a little bit more free for just a little while, and then pull the plug on it and see how much of the power that they've given themselves that they can get away with in Australia. You know, my whole life I've always thought of Australia as one of the other parts of the free world, a free country with tough people. You know, it used to be a prison colony, kind of, you know, they've had their own problems or whatever, but they were known around the world as one of the other free countries like the U.S. And both countries now, the U.S. and Australia and others like it, we're all looking like the same country in the one world government. And you can see that they didn't take examples of free democracies as the model of this nightmare that they're building. And you're right. Everywhere I look, everywhere I hear, that's all I hear from any politician is lockdown, masks, vaccines. And it's not even about any of those specific topics. The point is they are trying to take away the last little freedom that any individual on this planet has, and that's just the free choice to be yourself where you want to be, to visit the things you want to see, to have your body, mind, and soul the way that you feel they should be, in the most healthy way that you feel like they are. Now, it's true, maybe that's not the same thing for some people, but I don't believe any person on this planet, royalty or not, has the right to tell me what I can eat or not eat or put into my body or think. We're getting to the point that basically that's what it's come down to, is the totalitarians are telling us what we're allowed to think, what we're allowed to eat, and just like you said, where we can travel, what we can learn. It's a nightmare beyond some of the predictions that people have made over the years. And even myself, I'm a little shocked at the speed and the pace in which it took over. I can remember just 3 years ago, I was that weird conspiracy theorist that came up with theories about how our governments were evaporating any freedoms an individual might have all around the world. And now no one will talk to me because they all know that I was 100% right, except for how fast it approached and took over. It's even shocking to me to see what's been going on.
And please remember, listening out there, we're just talking about the problem to understand the solutions here. The food is the reason this is happening. The inavailability of food in the future in as little as 1 year is the reason, in my best opinion, my best understanding from doing almost a decade of research on this grand solar minimum and how the sun has affected societies in the past as a civilization reset every single time. Well, the technology is better. So, of course, the elitists, if you want to call them that, are going to try to control society, having learned from at least the last 6 of these to 2,400 years ago how to retain control. And with 8 billion people on the planet, that's a lot of people to control. 8 billion people could easily overwhelm and override militaries, elitists, governments, any institutions. Within seconds. If everybody turned on them, they would be gone. So during this time of upheaval in the food supply chain, the economy, and our way of lives, how would you control it? Well, the way things are looking now, you're being controlled, set up to be controlled before the event manifests in as little as 12 months. Because, Ransom, I am sure you've heard me say this many a time. About a year out before the food shortages that rock the planet to the point of civil unrest where people are on the streets, they're going to lock this planet down completely. I've said that so many times before, but my jaw has fallen on the floor learning about this now and how quickly it did roll out. I thought, we might have another year or so back in 2019. I thought, we'll start, hitting it, trying to change society, move, lock people down around 2020, 2021. But I didn't realize the fashion it would be done and just the darkness that surrounds all of this, the way it is being done. It's still baffling to me. But if anybody's listening out there, every single thing that you're seeing now, the way governments are positioning, the way that militaries are positioning, police forces are positioning, the global governance system is positioning for total control over citizens, is to prevent the unrest when the food shortages arrive. So if you haven't prepared now, it's not actually too late, but it's getting close to the midnight hour where you have a couple months left. And we can talk a little bit about that with the Walmart supply chain logistics managers in different regions that I had a chance to get a message from passed to me through another person. It's off the record, but not mentioned, just general information. Things are about to fall apart here real quick. And if you're not prepared, if you're not out, if you don't have, I'm not even going to say a month worth of food, several months worth of food, and you're able to protect it and work with communities to even grow more, expand that food source. So this is it. We're going to ride through this to 2024. And whoever's left at that point, then it's going to have to face another set of hurdles. But maybe it's all fictitious at that point where whoever got through it is, then, the reset's over and everybody's just going to go back to normal again. I am not sure at this point. I am unsure about a lot of things more than I was last week. But one thing I am sure of is this new mandated lockdown with vaccinations for the military to weaken it, and at the same time requiring vaccination certificates and status, whatever it might be, to go anywhere on the planet from this point. They've locked everybody down. This is it. This is the last week of your freedom as you know it, as an individual, as a sentient traveling person on this planet. It's done after this week, so enjoy it while you can.
Well, I'm going to attempt to do the same thing I did during the last lockdown, which was not be locked down. I went where I wanted to. I did what I wanted to. One of the concerning things to me really is, this is the second kind of year that I've attempted to farm for myself, trying to get just enough food to, eat on, maybe store a little bit. And what I've come across is, more than a half failure. I did get, tons of squash this year, but I'm realizing that a lot of the plants that are going to develop food, like I have a bunch of tomatoes, corn, melons, and other things, I don't know if they're going to make it, long enough to develop actual food that I can store out of those things. And like all of the corn, it had super amounts of pollen and just crazy tassels and everything. But now the little corns that are developing don't look like much. So I could just imagine if I was depending my life and my family's life on the ability to grow food, and you didn't have any stored and the stores don't have any, you're done. I mean, it's that simple. I think people don't really realize how fast things can change. Besides all of the things that are going on in the world, just one thing that affects you directly, which is your stomach, can alter your life totally. So just looking at what I'm growing and thinking about, what if this was all there was and I was trying to protect and harvest this, I would be in some really rough shape. We would be looking forward to a really rough winter. And I'm not talking about like rough, like some people think of. I'm talking about really like a lot of people in olden days, if you want to call it like that, when they were having soup kitchens and other things, there were people out there that were just doing fine,
in certain areas, and other people couldn't grow enough to feed their families, and they were literally pissing in pots and selling that, and that's where you get the term, so poor you don't have a pot to piss in. They were selling their urine so that people could get the ammonia and whatever else they did with it as a product. I mean, that's literally how bad things got. And I don't see that there's any reason now that things wouldn't be as bad or worse. Matter of fact, I think it would be much worse now because people are so interdependent on a system that has total control. And you can see what they're doing now with that control, where they're threatening, your entertainment, your belly, your travel, yada, 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 with compliance to some kind of, in their own words, a non-approved experimental thing that they're doing. I'll leave it at that because, I keep getting in trouble. For some reason, the ideas that I seem to string together in my moronic way really offends YouTube and their censors. And, I don't know if you saw this or not, but, a sign of the times that we're in is, did you see the Mercola thing where he's going to be deleting his entire archive of articles, videos, etc.? And you have CNN following him around, catching him without his shirt on, demanding answers about the people that he killed with his misinformation. And he put out a video talking about we're well beyond the point of time where we can have a civil, free debate of ideas. It's only one way, or you're going to be deemed a criminal. And this social credit score is like a light idea of it. It's more like gulags are coming because of the way that people are acting. And I've been looking all over the world, and they are indeed building shelters or containment areas for large amounts of people in anticipation of a worsening pandemic. And you can take that to mean whatever that means. And I think it's dead on the money that the real point and the real thing is that they know there are going to be food shortages, and they know that people go crazy when their stomach's involved. That's the first thing that kind of sends us back down the animal path. There's a lot of things, like revenge, etc., but nothing really rocks a human being's core conscience like starving or having their loved ones starve. And most people are willing to do anything to avoid that outcome. And just imagine if all the governments know that there's going to be a food shortage, they most definitely would be putting the dominoes in effect to have an outcome that they see as acceptable. And you got to remember, these are the people that come up with terms like acceptable losses and collateral damage, and these are the same people that call the Defense Department the Defense Department instead of the Offense Department. Is because our entire reality is flipped upside down. Even the meanings of words now are not up for debate, and they change the definition of things now. If you haven't noticed, in the medical industry specifically, some definitions of words have been changed to fit the new idea of reality. I'm trying not to say stuff because I still want to put this up on YouTube in a few days or whatever it is when they finally let me re-upload. And it's so bizarre that we're in this spot. But yeah, what did you think about the Mercola thing? Because that's a big name, and he is obviously scared. And I've heard a lot about other doctors that are doing similar things and putting out similar information, like Dr. Tenpenny and some others that are going into hiding in fear of their own government that's mixed with the media. It's a big conglomerate now that each individual is starting to feel the pressure of. And that's amazing that we're at that point where the world system can crush you individually, financially, mentally, and with your freedom. And, if things get worse, we may be debating people's lives in one way or another.
Well, let's say 7 billion people on the planet. The elitists understand that they're going to have to reduce that to 2 billion or less for the elitists to stay in control the way they do now. And anything that gets in the way of that agenda, and I love how they always talk about the science. I hear this how many times when I talk about the grand solar minimum, the cycles of the sun, the civilization resets, and I keep always, well, the science says this, and that. I'm like, wait a second. The very definition of science is that you continue to argue points, retest hypotheses, retest theories, always question, never settle, ever. It is never settled. Quantum physics would never have arisen if the science was settled on what an atom was. You know, at the very base where we took that as gospel truth for how many decades of the atom was the smallest energy matter that we understand in the universal third dimension realm. Well, if it would have been science is settled, then other entire sciences would not have come out of that. Torsion physics, plasma physics, understanding of the sun in a greater magnitude that we do now. If they would have stopped at the atom and said, oh, that's it, you're right, no more, no, nobody else look at the atom's the smallest thing, can't be any smaller. No, forget those electrons, those don't, we can't count, this is an atom. You know, science never be settled, ever, and I don't care what it is never settled. So the very definitions of science, they're being anti-science by saying the science is settled. But talk to anybody like that and they're like, what? No, the science is settled. Didn't you hear all the scientists say the science is settled? I'm like, wait a second. But they tell you the science is settled. They're not true scientists. And I wish there were more people to call them out because, you know, I had Vice News go after me with that piece there because of my ideas about the sun moving us into food shortages and how governments would react. I laid out a full 90-minute presentation on Jeff Berwick's Dollar Vigilante Summit, timelines, planetary geometry, or where the planets sit in the heavens, a year-by-year movement through up until 2024 when we start to get earth cracks. I told you exactly what to look for in terms of earth rifting, sinkholes, earth cracks, upwelling, which we saw and was at Haryana in India. That was a good example there. Everybody knows sinkholes. You've seen a ton of those around. But earth cracks really aren't so common, but, you know, 5-mile-long earth cracks appearing down in Mexico. So we're starting to get everything. An increased amount of landslides, too. So we're really starting to get into all of it. And once I put that into a full series of what to expect with the bridges going down, the railroads cracking, the pipelines ripping apart, the fiber optic cables, the electrical conduit, all that starting to rift and shake, that our society's not going to hold it together because of these infrastructure breakdowns, with a timeline on when you can expect amplifications in infrastructure breakdown. As soon as I did that presentation, not even 48 hours afterward, hit piece comes, bam, bam, bam. Restoked through all the global warming rah-rah websites. Oh yeah, they're hitting David. Oh, look at David. Oh, he's making money. We got to take him down. This guy's got to get off the net. He can't have a voice. So, you know, living through the same thing a little bit, I mean, on a very, very, very microcosm compared to what they're experiencing, but having a major news platform already call for my deplatforming across all social media and all to remove me completely off the internet because I have a timeline with the science compared to what this CO2 narrative taxation thing is. Yeah, there's a problem there. Science is never, ever settled, ever. And anybody who tells you such is not a scientist. They are anti-science, pure and simple. Pure and simple. So always question. And we should never stop questioning. We should never be, you know, admonished or criticized for asking simple questions of why. Can't we do it better? How do we do it better? Is there something wrong with this? Is there a way to improve it? I don't know, but the questions should never cease, ever. That's how we have airplanes, and we're not walking everywhere, I guess. Call me crazy.
Well, you know, you kind of can know where we're going with the, like I said, sign of the time. So when they're really going after certain people and you see the White House naming like 12 people that they want to go after for misinformation, it kind of reminds you of the debate of flat earth versus round earth and the history that goes beyond that. What a bizarre history, right? For a long time, people were burned at the stake made prisoner at their homes. Their wealth was taken, all kinds of things, because the science was settled and they were trying to give a new idea on new information. And then you fast forward to the future, and you have a CIA-funded program to convince people that the science is indeed not settled when it comes to things like basic realities of a round earth versus a flat earth. And then they use that to say that, well, if people are over here believing this, then they probably believe this and this other thing. And they've lumped everyone together like this to where there's no debate, or you're, considered a denier of one kind or another, or something like that. And then also on the flip side, you have no privacy anymore. And people, think they have privacy, but they don't really have any privacy. Here's an article about Apple, and they're using the idea that these companies that are known for exploiting young people, I'll say, they're using that same idea to end freedom. So here's Apple's plan to think different about encryption opens a back door to your private life. Basically, an article saying that Apple thinks that they're so big that they need to check in on your life and go through your data to make sure. And here's another one from Associated Press talking about Apple to scan U.S. iPhones for images of, I don't even want to say the term because I think you guys know where I'm going. But anyway, they're scamming the phones, trying to get evidence. Now, that may or may not be a good thing in your opinion or not in your opinion. I don't believe in invasion of privacy. I think there's plenty of other signs out there to find people that do things. But here's an article that really kind of gets you. Some of these same firms and associations to the world government or, communist government of China, take your pick. I believe in myself that these two have merged into one. And here it is. These are AI people. I sent a picture of it to you earlier, David, and it didn't have any reference. I kind of did that on purpose because I just wanted to see what you'd think of the picture. But these are all people that don't exist. And I brought this up before, that if they can create these kind of pictures of children and adults, you can never believe anything that you see on media ever again. I mean, they can come up with 100 of these very likable, real-looking people. And if you can make one frame, you can make a million frames, meaning that they can do video as well or better as this with digital creations and fake creations and say that anything anywhere happened. You can say, I can use a software right now, David, to get your face and some video of you and make you say things that you didn't say with a sample of your voice and a little bit of your video. I can make you do and say all kinds of stuff, which starts to make you question whether or not the reality that you're being fed has anything to do with actual reality, and it's not all a creation. And kind of the reason I bring that up is back to what we were talking about, is that there's no longer a debate about things. If there's no debate about things, you are in that complete totalitarian version of a government that we think of in our nightmares, where, like I said, you can't even think different than someone else, or you will be, crushed. And they are getting, like I said, on the individual. Think about it, David. You said on a smaller scale, they did that with the Vice article, but they're doing this to millions and millions of people throughout the social media networks, shutting them down. They're trying to create a fake reality where everyone agrees on certain things they want to get done. And I think, like you do, that it's more about the changes in the sun and the earth than it is about any agenda, real or fabled, that they push on the public. Because, like I said, things are about to get nasty. And I think that's why that they've increased every type of intrusion into your life. Here's another article that's the census now is going on past their constitutional power, like they have in the past. From asking you about how much water fits in your toilet tank, all the way to whether or not you identify one way or another, all kinds of questions that are intrusions from the government into your life. And they really want to know these things because I think they have a big algorithm that they feed all of this digital information in. And what it does is it coincides with their contact tracers so that they can predict human behavior at the end times. And you're saying, I thought you said 2 billion people. That sounds like a lot to me. I was just thinking, if you really wanted to get rid of 90% of a population, you might get them all to agree on to do one thing or another, or maybe force them to do that thing or another. And if you can get what they're saying their aim and their goal is by their own words is 90%, they want to give everybody on the planet a new something, a new gift for you, an internal inside gift. And then you're susceptible to anything that comes afterwards.
Yeah, because before the animal herds roaming the plains of Africa were good enough at 70%, but suddenly the migration across the African savanna needs to be 90%. I just don't get it with this herd mentality. And, think about how easy or difficult it would be to control starving billions of people, or not. And what point do they stop people from having conversations, just remove the internet altogether? How much would you be in the dark? And what if they removed your mobile phone access? Because I saw this craziest story out of Pakistan that if you didn't take new medicine, they turned off your phone.
Yeah.
Talk about a way to, for me, like, how did they know how do they interloop? Because you got to think about framing a reference of a technological, incredible advanced society. Japan, Korea, jump right to the top of the list, right? How was Pakistan in there that able to know who did, who didn't, whose mobile phones should be turned off, and how do they do it by a name-by-name basis on almost a real-time basis? This leads me to go, wait a second, the tech in these countries is so 50 years advanced of what you consider it might be. Because when I'm watching that roll out in real time, people are lined up for miles in cars, and as soon as they're in a car and bam, their phone turns back on, like real time. So I'm like, wait a second, how much tech is really out there to be able to facilitate the simplest of things? And you consider Pakistan and most people, in the bottom half of countries, technological advance, and also with their mobile phone networks and fiber optic cable and different internet layouts to get connectivity up into the mountains and through a majority of that country. It's just not there. It's not. So how are they able to get so precise? That scares me a little bit, knowing that you consider that far removed, way out of that technological, even they're not even on the technological radar of anyone, and they're still able at that level to operate. Something maybe we haven't been told there, Ransom.
I was just thinking about this same topic. And there's a lot of theories about the new cell phone technology and the satellites that went up and the combination of those technologies working together. However, put those aside, if you were going to use some kind of thing, you might increase production of the towers that make this, whatever it is, capable. So whenever you see headlines like a 60% increase in 5G towers in the middle of a pandemic, when everyone's told that they need to stay home and that they can't work or they might spread it, it kind of makes you wonder why crews are going out around all the country during this time, increasing the 5G capability. And speaking of third world countries, if you've ever been to a reservation, I'm not trying to badmouth the reservation or anything, but it can be compared to a third world country in the way that there's only probably a convenience store and a post office and maybe a clinic and maybe a supply store if they're lucky around there. There's just really not much commercial things that they can do. So there's really nothing, but you will notice that with all of the Adobe huts, trailer houses, and low-income housing, there are brand new, shiny 5G towers. And in areas where there's forest and remote locations where barely anyone lives, there's nice, brand new 5G towers that look like pine trees. And I filmed some of these and put them on my channel before. So you got to wonder, if you're in that third world country, are there a bunch of 5G, little machines? I mean, because really the telemarketing, the telecommunications, the way it is now, really doesn't involve a lot of big equipment. You just need high places and a couple of, broadcasters, receivers, and boosters and things like that on the tops of these towers. So even in a third world country, they're offering 4G and 5G capabilities in some of these areas. And I saw a similar thing about India, and it blows your mind that people would rather have their phone and their internet access than have their freedom over their body. And yeah, it is a really scary thing that you're talking about. But think about that when it fits into all of this spying and tracing. You have to know that even if they have a good realization of where people are in third world countries, it's hard to believe some of their other fabled tales about war and what's going on with conflicts around the world when some of these informations just don't add up. If you can do this, why can't you do this? And I've always wondered this, and with the space program, the same kind of thing there. Supposedly they can't do these certain things, but yet they do other things that are equally, if you can do one, you can do the other. So it makes you wonder why we're given this illusion of rocket technology and the fact that, we can barely beat a cold virus, that's been, it's kind of a joke when you know the history of mankind and what they've overcome. Volcanoes, probably asteroids, grand solar minimums, floodings, droughts, war, famine, all of that stuff we've always made it through. And here we come to a point in time, the first time that I know of, except for possibly an ancient history, that the entire world is connected. And not only that, that the people of the world think they need to be connected to this massive AI network of unknown apps, programs, and agendas. If that doesn't sound too woo-woo.
No, because I really can't remember the last time that I tuned into a Pakistani broadcast and actually seeked out, except for the weather news when I'm looking for extreme storms or some kind of, harvest losses in some of these countries. That world connectivity, great. It's good to be connected, but how many countries do you really hit their media or even have conversations with somebody from that country? I'm going to say 90% of the countries you never even contact with. Even if you're using Google Translate, you're not going to read any of the things in the articles, except it's just, the illusion of connectivity. Hey, you need to connect all these 203 countries or 207 countries. I don't know how many this year it is. But then really, how many of those are you participating in the conversation? Because they sold us on this whole work from home thing, that's the reason that 5G needs to be rolled out. Faster connectivity, because everybody home. It's a new way of life, Ransom. It's a reset. So I was looking, knowing what I know about Emerson batteries as the battery backup for mobile phone towers. I'm looking at that, and 36 hours later, they're out. It's great, and they have battery backups for short-term power outages, but 36, 48 hours after, and unless it's military hardened, you're looking at 72. Almost every battery standard is a 36-hour charge on it, on the stations. So these tiny little ones that you're talking about would still need power at all times. So would there be enough power from just a regular, what would look like a landline coming into your house, a regular just electrical above ground cable? Would that be enough to supply the units at all times versus having some of these, more highly powered, what's that, 400 volt cables coming in or something, 400 amp, cables coming in. Something like this to power one of the larger stations that you see around. Because you take a look at the base of those things, they require their own power source. They require their own refrigeration, cooling units. Oh, by the way, I knew a guy who used to work on those things. And that spray foam that you can buy, that spray that you can fill in behind, your house. So let's say there's a crack in some wood or something, you can spray something in that foam that expands out. If that were to have to actually accidentally get sprayed inside the fans there, and those fans got all gummed up, the units would overheat and those things would fry. That's what I heard. So it's really important to keep those fans functional, because if they were ever to get damaged in any way, shape, or form, those towers would go down. So I'm wondering about, the power outages that are expected. And if it is going to go from a larger, and that's the distraction, the super large towers that we're seeing, and there are smaller units, because there's a lot of 5G, 5G transmissibility units inside the street lights. You know, because I know Mark Steele, and for a little short story of Mark Steele, he is the one who developed the monocular sighting device for the Cobra helicopter pilots for the monocular. That's a, single eye down display that allowed the Cobra helicopters to get their weapon sighting systems in. He developed that for our U.S. military, originally from the UK, swapping over tech. He started to break some of these down into what was in these 5G towers, and he's like, whoa, what you see on a lamppost, that could be triangulated in, and there's enough power in each of those lights that's in a city on a regular lamppost on any random corner that has that little antenna sticking out at the top of it. If there's 3 of them or 4 of them in an area, they could triangulate in on a person, and they're running with their own power supplies to create that full mesh grid of 5G. Okay, that's in a city. But bringing that into the countryside, like how many of those would they have to be able to interconnect between the trees to make it as what you're talking about?
I don't know, because they seem to be able in third world
I
countries.
don't either. I'm asking the question. I'm just asking the question, really. I don't know. I'm looking for an answer, too.
Well, it seems like they may have, enough there, because there's no shortage of people from third world countries streaming, watching, satellite TV and all kinds of stuff. They have cell phones. They got accounts. They're doing cryptocurrency. They have access to the same things we have, which means that the grid of surveillance has access to them. And I was looking at this company that they got associated over there, according to CNN, if you can believe them. Anyway, it's a company that works for an intel agency that seems to be scouring through all of the genetic data from the Wuhan lab that didn't do anything, looking for origins. Now, I thought that they had already settled that this, that didn't happen. So it makes you wonder what else they're looking for. And I got a question. How many more of these places are there around the world? I mean, we know of a couple that do that. But if you remember at the end of the Soviet Union, there were things like this, like labs like the Wuhan lab that were just left open. Film crews went in it, looking at all kinds of stuff, anthrax, Ebola, monkeypox, et cetera, et cetera. These are just things that it seems like they put out there to keep the fear boiling, I guess. But if they have all this surveillance, and they really did show that they had, a lot of surveillance. If you take China, for example, with their Dragonfly software, they know when someone steps out of line there almost immediately. And then they're trying to, act like we don't know that the NSA has been spying on us. It's this whole argument back and forth about, whether Tucker Carlson or President Trump or whoever was targeted by the intel agencies to be spied upon. Seems really arbitrary and irrelevant, considering we already had the revelations several years back that they were bulk collecting massive data on almost every American citizen in one way or another. And I've told people that for a long time that they may not be keeping all of this data in one place, but if you connect the grid, which is local, commerce, all of these companies, people don't realize that every time that they go into a retail store, the store pings their phone and steals information that way. So we've already given over to this massive tracking grid. The question, I think, really is, are people willing to just turn it off and walk away from it? And it kind of scares me that you gave that example of Pakistan or India, whichever it was, where the government there kind of just twisted their arm a little bit. Not very much, just a little bit. We'll take away your phones. It's like a bunch of teenagers gave in from rebelling against their parents with the threat of taking their phone away, which sounds pretty ridiculous when you put it that way, but yet it happened.
There's so many other things of ridiculousness going on, too many to mention and too many that would flag the broadcast on other venues to be pulled down for simple common sense conversations about things.
Well, here's one for you. Let me
where do we move?
Oh,
how will that be used against us, and where do we move from here? I mean, will this determine how much food you get during the food shortages globally? Did they determine how much food you get, what types of food you get? Because knowing what I know about Chinese social credit score, it's a determinant on what type of seats you can buy in a train. If you're a good citizen, you can get the high-speed rail train, which will take you from Beijing to Shanghai in 2.5 to 3 hours, depending how many stops. Or if you're a bad citizen, you have to take the mail train, which will take like 4 days. I mean, these are things that are already in play in China. And the amount of food that you can buy, you're also limited, like on which types of food. They'll deny you purchases in the supermarkets already. And you won't be allowed a certain amount of oil going over, and different kind of cooking oils or certain types of rice. You'll be relegated to the broken rice, not the full grain, long grain rice. You know, there's a whole bunch of different things that are going on in China with food right now and social credit. So I wouldn't really put it past me to think that moving forward, somehow this is going to tie into your accessibility to food and the quality of foods that you'll be able to access, and also the quantity and the frequency that you could purchase these items. Now, that's if you're unable to grow anything. And then I wonder, you know, that swinging the pendulum the other way, if you're already pretty self-sufficient, you know, what are they going to do? Limit the amount of heat in your home? Like, oh, in the winter, you can't turn your house over 50 degrees Fahrenheit. You know, something like this is what makes me wonder what's going on. Oh, your credit card. No, you can't purchase any more petrol for the month. You've already purchased enough. Something like this.
Well, you know, that seems pretty likely with stuff that's been going on already. You remember I forgot the name of the company, but the power company in Texas was caught remotely turning up the thermostats or turning them down, when it was really cold in Texas. They were turning down the houses. People woke up freezing and couldn't figure out why. It's because the company was remotely tapping their choice of their temperature in their home. And you've already heard or seen.
Oh wait, ransom, stop. They did that in the summer too, where people had their air conditioners, you know, tuned down to 72 or 70, and those same company, Texas, they turned it up to like 76, 78 in the home to prevent another power down.
Yeah, to prevent a power down, they knew that there would be need. And, you know, I've had arguments with people about that, whether or not that was the company's fault or Texas's fault. A brother of mine actually works in the oil industry, and he was convinced it was because Texas didn't join the World Oil Federation or whatever it was. And I was telling him, no, they got an executive order from the administration only to have so much energy so that they wouldn't go past their carbon credit limit. And they followed that edict. But, you know, let's just throw a hypothetical out there. I was kind of wondering, you know, if I was to tell you, like, you know, you need a haircut, would you go to the 11th worst haircut place? Like, if there was only 11 places to go and you had a ranking system, you wouldn't go to the 11th, or if you were going to get your car fixed, you wouldn't go to the 11th best auto, you know, whatever. Yeah, and if you wanted internet security to protect whatever, you're not going to go with the 11th best company. And the reason I kind of say that is because I was looking at WebMD, and they're talking about, you know, how the U.S. health system ranks the last amongst the 11 richest countries, or the 11 countries with the best healthcare, high-income countries, and we're ranked at the last. And then you're expected to take this advice from the 11th worst in a group of stuff. So like I was saying, you're not going to go to the 11th best mechanical guy to get your stuff fixed. You're not going to pick the 11th best firearm to protect yourself with. You're not going to go to a restaurant and go, oh, well, this one's, you know, down at the bottom at number 11. Let's go eat there. You're not going to do any of these things, but yet in the U.S. and other places, you're kind of forced to take the worst choice of all of them. And, you know, we're expected to follow these people that are ranked 11th worst, you know, and we're supposed to follow all their advice and everything. And it's just funny, because if you ever say anything about anything else now, it's like, you know, that movie Invasion of the Body Snatchers, where you get a bunch of screeching, you know, noise headed your way. And I've been experiencing this in real life, where I say the most common sense things and people are twisted, offended, and upset that I had the gall to even say them. So, I'm saying that's kind of, I'm venting about, I was fed this idea. Maybe I was brainwashed, maybe I was indoctrinated, but from my grandfather to me, that I lived in a free country where, you had certain unalienable rights. And, I was even told I was a little bit of a moron when I was young because I didn't really know them that well. So I found out what they were just in time to realize that I didn't have any of them. And now we're going into this weird future where things are warped out like the Twilight Zone. And I'm left with the only freedom that I still have, which right now is growing food. I mean, really, that's one of the last freedoms in the United States that we have right now, is to grow food. You can do it. No one's doing it, but you can do it. How long until that's mandated and ruled? Because that's really the point where we need to figure out which way we're going as a species there. We're already debating whether or not they can put things in us, but when we get to the point where they say you can't grow food and eat your own food, then we have a real problem, Houston.
They could say that for larger animals and animal husbandry and enforce that, I guess, more efficiently than saying you can't grow a vegetable garden, because to understand that the human body is going to need fats and proteins to continue to function optimally. To have a vegetable garden, there's a lot of micronutrients and obviously the roughage and these sort of things inside there, but that only takes you so far. So having the veggie garden and growing your own food, yeah, that gives you a lot of freedom. But I think where the elitists are going to try to grab control is with the animals, because the chickens, eggs, goats, pigs, cows, bison, deer, turkey, grouse, pheasant, and all these types of things, even sparrows if you're hungry enough, Chinese used to eat sparrows. The crazy thing, they would have rail cars full of dead sparrows that they'd remove out of the ecosystem, thinking they were eating the food and diminishing the food supply. So sparrow became a delicacy in the late 50s, early 60s during the Great Leap Forward. But how do you think that to outlaw people growing a vegetable would be too difficult? Because you could, as I do, I intersprinkle everything so it looks like a little mixed forest. If you don't put it in straight rows and you put it on a forest edge and blend it in with, we even have seeds that fall occasionally and just start growing. You're like, oh, there's a mustard plant right there. Things will always grow that are edibles that can be disguised into the landscape. That's a super easy one to do. Super easy. What's not so easy is keeping a cow a secret on your land,
Ooh.
So for them to walk around with teams of people saying, whoa, you can't have a cow, we're going to confiscate your cow, well, then they're confiscating your fat source, your energy source, your lipid source. Something very different from the carbohydrate source or the water nutrient source. So outlawing your own food, how far will they go, and how could they even effectively mandate that? I could grow trays of microgreens in my house, and unless they have some sort of drones coming over with tech that can penetrate your roof and take a look at what's in the home and have every single plant species with its frequency mapped out that you could ping it between other objects. I don't know how efficient they would be to stop everybody from growing their own food. Walk me through it, because I'm sure you have a few ideas.
Yeah, well, you already have a whole nation interwoven of local officials that are more than happy to care about your yard. I have them come by all the time about weeds that are too tall. They have the time to break out a measuring stick. Now, I realize they're not going to go out to remote areas and try to pull this. And you're right, growing all those things are great. And I think really what's going to happen is people that have seeds already, like you said, I can grow micro stuff, and you have the stuff to do that already. You already have like stuff to start growing. The vast majority of everyone else, though, even if they catch on that they can do some of these tricks, they won't have the materials to do it because through commerce, they'll shut down all of that stuff. I mean, and you made a point a while back. I mean, I don't know how far back it was, but you made a really good point that I think is a kind of an alert for the public, is that if you go down to your Walmart or your Lowe's or Home Depot or whatever it is, and they don't have any mason jars available, you might wonder what's going on. So if you went to 2 or 3 stores and none of them have a box of mason jars for you to buy, you're kind of SOL there. You know what I'm saying? Unless you've already have these kind of supplies. And I kind of wanted to bring up, I've been doing a new thing, and I'm sure that they don't work as good as mason jars and stuff, but there are a lot of products that come with these little jars that have measurements on them with lids and stuff like that. And these are all great to start just storing seeds in temporarily, or even food if you still have power, obviously. But that way you cannot waste your mason jars and other things, with temporary storage, and you can keep all of your good stuff with real deal food for survival, where you know that once you crack it, it's going to be fresh. And I think that's one of the main reasons they went after the pressure cookers a while back and kind of deemed them in a bad light too. And if you notice, you just see all of these steps that seem random, but when you put them together, they go right after food consumption and being able to be self-sufficient.
Pressure cooker is going to blow up and scar you for life. Stay away from the pressure cookers. We'll be right back in 2 minutes and 2 seconds.
Aha! Aha! What do you know from funny, you bastard?
And trauma, virus catching. And if we burn, you burn with us.
Are you awake yet? I hope. We've tried for years and years to use passive resistance and loud voices to make a change. The time is over. Your governments around the world have no other goal than to decimate your entire existence. At the hands of the bankers and the elites. The war is coming, and it's your choice to decide if you want to be a warrior or a victim. Denial is not a choice anymore. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, the number one listener-supported radio station on the planet. Not giving up. Revolution Radio, 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 radio. All right, thanks for listening while we took that short break here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And yeah, we're going to get back to your host.
And welcome back for the second hour of Mini Ice Age Conversations. I'm your host, David Dubine, with Ransom Godwin here tonight from 420 TV, Freedomist Films, right over on YouTube. He's banned for now for having interesting thoughts and ideas that go outside the narratives. So make sure you check out his channel. Also, right here on freedomslips.com, Revolution Radio, consider a donation to keep this type of venue on air. You know, there's running costs every single month. Studio costs, production costs. To be able to have us, myself and Ransom, as just one single host throughout the entire 24 hours of day on both Studio A and B, continuing to bring and give information ideas that can keep you and your family safe during this time of transition. So if you think that's valuable and worthy of paper money that you can trade now so freely and easily, it's going to lose value anyway. Might as well put it to good use right now while it can still be spent in a good fashion. freedomslips.com, donate button on the top of the nav bar. And just before we went on the break, Ransom was talking about jars, canning jars, pressure cookers, etc., and the demonization of pressure cookers. Yeah, that's to get you away from wanting to store your own foods. My personal story here, I have been looking for canning jars, and I find them almost everywhere, but they're so tiny, they're unusable. So then, you know, if somebody were to listen to Ransom and I say, they would go, no, I saw canning jars in the store. These two guys, they don't know what they're talking about. What do you mean they can't store food? There aren't enough canning jars. I see canning jars. They're in the store. Yeah, but they're the ones that you use for the size of jelly jars. You can't really can an enormous amount of food in a 12-pack of things that you would use for jelly. You know, Smucker's jelly jars, even smaller, like the tiny little ones that we use for seed storage. So what I've found is to come around and think outside the box, do a workaround. I had a couple good experiences this week. We went out to a place called Home Goods, kind of like this discount Bed Bath & Beyond discount Hobby Lobby place. Has all the same stuff, but everything's at kind of a discount. You know, I don't know if it's one-off stuff, but they still have real nice stuff. But inside there, I did end up finding some mason jars. I found these 1.5 gallon mason jars with the snap-tight lid with the O-ring on top with the transparent O-ring. And they were $5. They were $4.99. Now, for me, that is an incredible bargain to get a 1.5 gallon mason jar. Now, I know, like you said, Ransom, you're not going to be able to preserve something in there for shelf life, you know, snapping it shut in a water bath to be able to preserve tomatoes or corn, green beans or whatever at that volume. But for me to be able to store sugar in that, flour, oatmeal, powdered milk at 1.5 gallons like that. And then we found some 2 gallons, but they were of a different variety. They still had the snap down lid. They weren't as wide mouth, so you have to use a smaller scoop if you're going to get something out of it. But those were $7.99 for a 2 gallon snap down tight snug lid. So when I first started getting into this game of learning how to do my own canning, etc., you could get a full 12 half gallon regular mason jars that you could use for, or ball jars if you could use for canning. And it would only be, I don't know, $8, $9 for 12 half gallon jars. Now it's like $14 for those little tiny jelly jars. It's ridiculous. It's hard to find the lids, if not impossible. I try ordering on Amazon all the time. My orders keep getting continually canceled. I've tried a few kind of off-brand lids. They never seal correctly. We tried to just can here. I've canned up eight jars of tomatoes just a couple days ago. One of the lids didn't snap tight, so I'm like, it's these kind of frustrating things. Okay, I understand it didn't snap tight. That's great. We can use it and make our own sauce. We'll use that one first. It's in the fridge right now. We know we can't store it in a shelf. These are just things you're going to have to learn. The quality of lids at the point. And then just before we went on break, Ransom was saying this demonization campaign of anything food storage. The demonization, the scare factor of don't use a pressure cooker. It's going to blow up. It's going to scar you for life. It's going to scar your kids. Don't get it. Oh, that's how many accidents they've had. But yeah, those are the ones from the 1940s, I guess. And again, if there's some common sense around it where you're not going to put a 15-pound weight on it, and even if you take the weight off, it's just going to the steam to come out. I mean, where do they get these scare stories where a whole entire pressure cooker is going to overpressurize and blast off and send shrapnel through the walls and blast you with hot water and everything? I just don't get it. Even if the pressure cooker were to over pressurize and snap out, and it would just send hot water everywhere. It wouldn't send hot tomato sauce, hot bean curd everywhere. So what is it that the inavailability with anything to get your food processed? And again, I'll go back into the freezer bags for a second, because I was looking for freezer bags because I have a vacuum sealer. You can buy the vacuum sealers now. They're back in stock in a lot of places, but the bags are not there. So there's always one. You're going to have to be continuously head on a swivel looking for parts and pieces to get this whole. Once you grow it is one thing. There's many, many facets to this whole game here. You're going to have to grow your own food. Then you're going to have to process it for storing it. And then you're going to have to actually do something with it. Put it in a jar. Put it in a vacuum sealed bag. Oxygen absorbers? Are you kidding me? Out of stock, out of stock, out of stock everywhere. Good luck ordering those even on Amazon, because everybody's in the same thing. Before, there was a very specialty niche of maybe 1% of the population, possibly 2%, would be into canning their own food, drying their own foods, storing their foods, dehydrating, etc. Now the pendulum's probably at like 7%, 8%. It has so overwhelmed the manufacturers that they're unable to even facilitate a percentage of what the demand is now. And you got to wonder, it's the same Fortune 500 companies are the ones that are manufacturing all of these implements to allow you to store food. So you have to wonder, if they're in on the game too with this global governance, of course they're going to pull back anything that's going to allow you to be self-sufficient, storing your food outside the system. I don't know, I'm going to leave it there because I could keep rambling for another half hour or so on this whole conundrum of everything that you need to get yourself taken care of, including buying seeds online. They're getting more and more difficult. The amount of seeds that you used to have, hundreds of kinds of seeds, hundreds of varieties of seeds, is now shrunk into like 50. You're getting squeezed. Like, I don't know how many of us could just survive on watermelons all the time. But if you look, there's a huge amount of watermelon seeds. But then you get into some of the broccolis and the squashes and these types of different corns, heirloom corns. They're just not there anymore. They're just gone. So, amaranths and the grains and the ancient grains and the spelt and these kind of things, super specialty crops that are going to keep you alive for a long time. they're just harder and harder to come by. And you're going to have to grow and grow it to get your own seed to then bring it back in and then save seed and keep 50% of your crop and save 50% for seed.
Yeah.
It's like a Rubik's Cube trying to figure it out without going insane and knowing that there's hope and you can still prosper and thrive and survive during these changes. But, you know, if you've already started and this is you're listening to this broadcast for the first time and go, oh, I need to go buy ball jars tomorrow after listening to these guys, I do wish you the best of luck in your preparations, because at the level we're operating, trying to get prepared now, we're finding it real difficult to find all these implements. I don't know about you, Ransom, out there, if you're seeing the same, but it seems a little difficile right now.
It is kind of hard to get stuff here. It's always been that way here, so we feel it more when there's a lack of stuff because we already are on a 2 days, a 2 day wait from anywhere. I kind of wanted to get your opinion on something that's kind of similar to what we were talking about. It's not really, I don't think it was the, fear of people hurting themselves with the pressure cookers. They feared everybody with some joggers in Boston, if you know what I'm talking about, a while back. That's why all of a sudden it became unavailable. But that was preemptive, like, to now. That's kind of what I was saying. And your point to, only certain percentages of people were ever into prepping and storing and doing these kinds of things. That's kind of what I was talking about. Whenever it becomes time where normal people with reason start realizing that they're going to have to do this, all the supplies will be gone for starting to do that. So people are going to have to become very inventive on how to store things and grow things. And you're right about the seed thing. I have a bunch of amaranth and some other stuff growing. And that's what I was talking about. It seems like I have very few ears of corn developing and things like that. I'm just going to have enough to store seeds and not really eat it. But I wanted to ask you about this, whether you believe it or not. Anyway, they're saying that 20% of Americans, they have ended friendships or relationships with people over facts about, the current pandemic. I'll just go ahead and say that. And then 29% of them say they've already lost somebody to COVID death. Now, I don't know how many people took this poll. It was probably only like 100 or something. But the idea that 29% of people actually know somebody kind of brings me to some other headlines that are on. I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about it or not, but I'm sure you've been seeing or hearing a little bit about some of the politicians that were making early decisions at the beginning of this whole thing, where they were shoving some people in places where older, more susceptible people lived, that they probably shouldn't have did that just out of common sense. It seemed like common sense to anybody. But anyway, a lot of people died. And what do you think about how they're kind of shrugging it off, where most of these key individuals that had something to do with this all of a sudden develop these scandals that they'll have to go for? Like Como there, he's got all these scandals all of a sudden that just, when you're weighing out things, it doesn't seem to weigh out to the other thing, what they're talking about. But these guys get to slip off into oblivion with waves of culling. It's kind of what I'm calling it, because, one person will make a decision and then a lot of people have to deal with that. And then they say, oh, well, it was a whole group and it was the situation. But then they keep doing these things. They keep doing it and doing it again. And they just, will get rid of them from something else. And then you got the same guy with his family members in the media kind of steering these stories. And this is where we get to not knowing what's true and what's not true, because you have so many of these fake percentages, polls, and things like this. And that people like Como will never be held responsible for anything they do. They may disappear into obscurity with some kind of scandal, but it kind of makes you realize that they're all scrambling at the end of the Titanic here to, get their position in the new organization of things, if that makes sense, because it's kind of obvious that our government has gone through a massive reorganization. And the part of the delusion, like these things, like they're going to put them away and you're going to think it's about that scandal and not the real scandal that he did. They're doing this on a massive scale with people that just don't realize that hunger's coming, because so many people are dependent on a little plastic card You know, it was harder to get away with it. Kind of what my point was earlier. It's harder to get away with it when you see the poverty in the streets and you see the shelves empty. But if you can convince people that, you know, their cards are malfunctioning or there's just a supply chain problem, but the stuff's coming, don't worry about it. You have, you know, given this delusion out there that there are no soup kitchens and there is no problem. But really, isn't that what EBT and this universal basic income idea of stay home, don't work, and we'll give you just enough to go to these places to get your food, and then maybe we can't give you as much each month in the food department because of this, that, or the other thing, and that plays right into what you were talking about. And I'm going to go ahead and say they're already in a way giving us rations through just saying things are out. Now, somebody told me at the dollar store that they're not even going to be covering ordering Starbucks anymore. It's not going to be a product that they're going to be carrying in there. And the reason given is because the supplier can't get it to them. And the supplier says, well, Starbucks not making it. And Starbucks says, well, we got a problem with milk and this, that, and the other thing. And these are the same corporations trying to divide and separate people into little groups with these social justice warrior narratives that go along. And these are the same people now that people think have the power over their food. So, like, you know, in Demolition Man, there was only the Taco Bell in the future. And even in our future, which happens to be the same year as that science fiction movie, our year is at the same time. And there really is a weird thing going on with the fast food places where they've changed all their menus to give you the most basic things. So that right there is what the future of American, at least, delusional, you know, choice. And really what you're getting is a ration. And think about what you're getting from these places, using Taco Bell as an example. You get some old dehydrated lettuce, some tomatoes that are old and dehydrated, and then you get some low nutrition meat and whatever, you know, whatever the gross stuff was that didn't, you know, because I used to be a butcher, so they carve a lot of stuff off the animal that's not going to go in the display case, and all of that stuff gets ground up into ground meat, and that's what you buy as ground beef. So it's like head meat and all of the stuff that you would generally think you wouldn't eat is what hamburger meat is. And we all know that even in the home, not just the fast food place, but even in the home, hamburger meat is like the main food source. And you were talking about what happens when they start cutting back on animals. Well, you'll start seeing it in the store. And you're right. What do human beings do without animal fats? They slowly get malnourished. I mean, you need the equal amount of animal fats that you do in alkaloids in fresh greens. So if you're not able to grow greens and you can't get meat, and you're going to the store getting these high calorie, low nutrition meals, that is exactly what you were talking about, you know, getting these little rations. And then what happens, because we've already seen it last year, the stores were saying, please only take 1 carton of egg or 1 gallon of milk. And that's when we were supposedly filled to the brim in the supply chain, because that was just at the beginning. So now we've had a whole year of all these people not working, not producing, not farming. And then you have the people that continue to eat and continue to take in resources, even though no new ones are being provided. And that sounds like, even if there wasn't something else going on, that's obviously not a sustainable lifestyle for a country to live in, or much less the world.
I'm going to say that this get out of jail free card, what you described with the scandal Como. We saw this, you know what's prophetic as well is just prior to the outbreak in early 2020, they had the most CEOs, CFOs, and COOs, those C-level executives, all retire. The most that had ever retired in a single year, all retired in 2019. Wasn't it magic that they knew to get out right then? Or were they told to get out? You've done your part. You've moved the ball forward with all the corporatocracy, and thanks for your service, and this is your get out of jail parachute. Have fun, get out. So the larger they are, it appears, the bigger the scandals are embroiled. So everybody's going to be rooting for them to be removed from power, rooting for them to be taken out, removed from the public eye, removed from the public scene. And it just fits in perfectly, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, Coleman, he disappeared. Good, he's out of there. Good. I hope we never see that guy again. Huh, he's on a beach somewhere going, hey, you all got played. Thanks, man. I just did my part. And we see this again and again with high-level people who have facilitated the agenda, the narrative to move the globalist playbook and football match another yard down the field, another yard down the field, and they're being rewarded. So when you see scandals, think of that as an exit for the persons who have finally completed their mission to states, countries, like Trudeau. Watch what's going to happen with Justin Trudeau as well. They've already had the inklings, the Achilles heels are being opened up at the moment, and watch, it won't be too long before he's removed as well, because he's done his part already. And the next player comes in to take over. It's like on the side of the field. All right. Sub in, number 7 out.
Yeah.
Trudeau out. Durbay come in, ivermectin in,
Yeah.
whoever it is, and the next person that's coming in. And you get the circle jerk again and again and again. So I'm wondering who is at the last point where they, like you say, on the Titanic, they're all at the lifeboats already down in the water, floating away from the sinking ship. So who are the last politicians to be left holding the bag, or how quickly do they get caught out where they can't get into the bunkers? Because here, that couple shows ago, I kept saying that one phrase, I'm taking up a new hobby. That is the key words for politicians to exit pronto to get to your safe location. If you hear anybody in the news media start talking about taking up a new hobby, anybody at really high levels talking about taking up new hobbies, that means they're bugging out right then. That is the exact key phrase for politicians and leaders and high-level people to leave immediately to your safe area. And I'm not kidding about that either. That is the exact phraseology. I am taking up a new hobby. Something with taking up a new hobby. When you hear that phrase, they are bugging out and everybody's running to the hills in power. That's the phrase you're looking for, truly. And I was trying to throw them off and trying to see if any of the politicians would bite on my phrase and be like, dude, those guys are talking about it's time to leave. Just to see what they would do.
Right.
That's me, though. I'm kind of one of those pranksters.
So yeah, along those same lines, I'm kind of waiting on people like Bill Gates and George Soros and all of them to all of a sudden retire, which leaves the public with no one to point the finger at anymore, right? There's no bad guys. They all retired, or they had a little scandal and they left, like you said. But it's not just them. You were talking about all the CEOs. I sent you a couple articles here that are about a record number of wealthy people are renouncing their American citizenship. They think something's up. They're going to places in the southern hemisphere. Here's another article. It's not just the rich starting a new life elsewhere, driving many to seek out citizenship outside the U.S. So you even see, I'm not going to say the rats fleeing the ship, but you're right. Who's the last guy? Do we wait? Who's the conductor that you finally see get in the lifeboat before we know that they are pulling the plug? The way I look at it, maybe I'm crazy, but when I see places like Fort Bliss taking in thousands and thousands of people, putting them on buses, flooding them into the United States, I see that that's the exact same thing or agenda that's going on in Europe, which got me wondering, why are they all moving to the central band of the earth? Because basically that's what we're seeing. In your research and a lot of work, you see all of these companies headed to Central America, headed to Northern Africa, and places like that, because that seems to be where the future lies in the not too distant future. Because I don't see the elite or heads of companies letting their, their, what do you call it, their legacies go by, their children, their fortunes, without, having a part of it. So I don't see them moving all down there unless they feel like their family or their interests are going to be covered. And, that has to make you wonder, what are you going to be left with if you're living here in the Northern Hemisphere with the majority of the third world and the leftovers of the old world up here, kind of just crumbling at the edges while our government sell us out, steal all of the inherited wealth, biggest transformation of wealth in history. All of these things are like terms that have happened in the past couple of years that keep driving our nation to nothing, because